Salutations to thee from the front, salutations to thee from behind, salutations to thee from all sides. O Lord, thou art everything, infinite in power and infinite in prowess. Thou pervadest all, therefore thou art all. This is a prayer from the Bhagavad Gita. So, before we can get into the topic, I would like you to close your eyes for a few moments and think of the reality within. Think of the reality as a point of brilliant light centered in your heart. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. More than a talk, this is like a kind of a meditation for us all. The topic is the center of existence. Yeah, it's a very beautiful and very profound subject. When we look out at the world from where we are, it seems we are at the center of the universe, a center of the world at least. It seems everything is for me. At the same time, from the earth, if you look around at the stars all over spread out, you feel, yes, the earth is at the center of the universe. And thank God, it's untrue. Because science says, and general consensus is, there is no fixed center of the universe. Every place is a center of wherever you are, that's a center. And the universe is exploding, as it were. So, every point can be a center. So, if no fixed center of existence, or if there are many centers of existence, like science says, then it cannot be a center. So what do you mean by saying the center of existence? So if everything is a center, then it's not a center anymore. However, that is also something that we will discuss. But when we wake up, when you open your eyes, we see the world around. And it's existing. Imagine waking up one day and seeing there's nothing around. Or you wake up feeling, I don't exist. It never happens like that. So we do have the indubitable feeling that I exist and this world also exists. Yeah. But what is its real nature has yet to be discovered. However, of course, it was discovered by the sages long time ago. The very word I am, or I exist, I am, and that isness, the being, It's an old, you can say, Indo-European word. I am, aham. Isness, the is asti. It comes from the word asti. So, a Latin word is est. So, these words are ancient words. It's just that we don't really know how far back this thing is part of our consciousness. So, this is the best proof that you exist, that you are existent, and somehow you seem to be at the center, But this itself is, Vedanta says, is an illusion of consciousness, that you are the center of the universe and the center of everything around. So, in the old days, we had this subject of existence being kind of thought about by people, and they used to bring it out in mythology. And these mythological stories, the foundational mythological stories, are nothing but creation myths. And if you read some of these creation myths, it's a wonderful study, of course, fascinating. And if you look at all these, they have produced, they were foundational, they have produced poetry, art and music and beliefs and the works. We may be dismissive about these old mythological stories, but they are everywhere around. The ancients tried to understand existence through mythology. It's still there with us, of course. We also create these modern myths all the time. But right now, we have an intellectual approach, a scientific approach to the understanding of existence. And there is also, of course, a higher spiritual inquiry about what is existence. So, we know even in the old days and even today, the sun is the center of existence. Really? Imagine if there is no sun. Nothing would have even been existing. So, this sun which is there, and we are all ancient sun worshippers. Most of ancient cultures were all sun worshippers, you see. So, the sun is the center of the universe. But the sun wouldn't exist if there was no other solar system, and the solar system wouldn't exist if there was no galaxies, and the galaxies wouldn't exist if there were other things also, other hundreds of things, black holes and white holes and this and that and other stuff in the universe. The sun wouldn't exist like that. So, what is happening is, we are pointing out to one aspect of this and saying this is the center. Well, that center wouldn't have existed if the other things wouldn't have been there. So, this is the first point we like to say. So, we exist. If there was no time or space, we wouldn't have existed. Imagine, but we don't see it. That makes it even more fundamental. So, time and space, in the old days, time and space was nothing but, it's a stage where you enacted your life and your existence and this and that. It was static. Then came the idea that, oh no, it is fundamental. In fact, everything is embedded within this fabric. It is now an entity, a physical entity, and it is expanding. Imagine, and we also expanding with that. We may think that we are there static, but then we are expanding. There are other laws of the universe which are also unseen, like take for instance gravity, etc., or the various constants in nature. They are also there. If they weren't there, you wouldn't exist. So, here we have, I am trying to kind of bring many things into the picture that are essential for our existence. And then, we have, we structure other people's existence and other people structure our existence. It is the environment and us are interacting, and the environment also has so many other species of life, say from the virus right up to a tree that's 5,000 years old. It's living. So, even they exist. So, we are in a kind of a symbiotic relationship with everything else. You may think you are the center, but from their standpoint, they also are the center of the universe. So, how many centers? It reminds me of that, the net of Indra. In one of the heavens in Hindu mythology, there is Indra, the king of the gods, and he has a big net. In fact, magicians are called, magic is called Indrajal, the net of Indra. And there is a vast net stretching to infinity. And at every point of the knot of the net, there hangs a small kind of diamond, a jewel. And in that jewel, if you peer deeply inside, you see the entire net stretching. Every point is infinite. So, there is an external net and there is an internal net. So, an external net is we are all connected. So, we are all the centers of the universe. You have to get everything together. And besides, the earth itself is, as it said, Carl Sagan says, a small blue dot. It's so beautiful, very small, just a speck of kind of dust floating there. That is the center of the universe, a small speck of dust, blue dust. But it is true. If you look at the vastness just of the solar system, there is another aspect which I would like to just quickly go, that our individual existence itself is dependent, first on the external things and secondly on many other factors. And so, Swami Vivekananda gives an example, it's a beautiful illustration. Imagine in a dark place, there is a line which cannot be seen, but on that line moves a point of light, just a point of light moving on that line. And as it moves, the rest of the old pathways are again darkened. And it moves and moves and moves on that line. And you see a kind of a faint light traveling in the dark. That is actually our life. The parts of that line which went dark are the past lives. And so, Swami Vivekananda brilliantly says, those existences, your previous existences have become subconscious. You cannot see it. So, you can see only that light, point of light moving on that line and think, this is me traveling. But you do not see everything that has led you to this. There is a connection between you now and everything that you see. All of us have a history. It is a long story, very, very long story. Every one of us has it. Only we know it. We do not tell it to everybody. But that is our story. So, does that story end with only I was born here and then by sudden kind of logic we will live forever? That is something which I have never been able to figure out. You suddenly come into existence and suddenly you are going to live forever and ever. If you are going to live forever and ever, you have lived forever and ever in the past. So, the past and present and future right now are centered in our consciousness here. I think this is clear. We don't need to kind of go into the technicalities, but it's a very vast kind of subject. So, you must be thinking now, what about the center of existence and the center of, so you must have become even more confused. But what, like I said, I was trying to expand your idea of existence, that we are here, yeah, but then it also means that there is something more to our own individual existence. So, the question comes, and the question was put by a sage to his father, who is also a bigger sage, and the father is telling the son, Sadeva Somya Midamagra Asid. O good looking one, existence was there in the beginning. Everything comes out of existence. So, then he says, through what logic can existence come out of non-existence? It's just impossible. So, and then there is a long discourse, I won't go into it, but to take into account another small dialogue, not a small, it's quite a lengthy, I will read parts of it. It happened in one of the, you can say, assemblies in the court of King Janaka. There are two great sages, one of the greatest sages, I will say one of the greatest persons ever born was the sage Yajnavalkya Rishi. So, all the other sages are putting questions and he is answering them. So, there was one other sage called Shakalya, and he is testing his knowledge of existence, what exactly is existence. So, before you can go in the dialogue, what happens is in Indian literature and philosophy and mythology, everything, there are three planes of existence. Okay. First is, if you look at it from outside, that is the, you can say, sphere of the divine sphere, the divine sphere. Then you have the environment outside, this is the second sphere, and then the inner environment, the third sphere. So, here this one, the one outside, and the higher one. Now, there is no break between these two. So, they are called Adidaiva, Adibhuta, Adhyatma. Adhyatma is this, the body and mind. Adibhuta is this external world, and Adidaiva is that which encapsulates both these things, just subtle. So, all these three planes of existence intersect. You can take one and say, this is what I want. No. Generally, it is called Bhur and Bhuva and Swaha. This world, remember the external world and the divine world. So, the sage is saying, he has been asked, what deity are you identified with in the east? Shakalya says. He says, the sun. Sun? Yes. So, now we spoke about the sun. He is saying, on what is the sun established, or on what does the sun rest? So, he says, on the eye. And what does the eye rest on? On colors. And what does the colors rest on? On the heart, on the mind, that's the mind and intellect. For one sees colors through the mind. So, the questioner was kind of happy, yeah. So, then the next is, what deity are you identified in the south? So, he is saying, with Yama, that is the god of justice. And what does this god of justice rest? On sacrifice, on yajna. On what does the sacrifice rest? He is saying, on remuneration. the remuneration that is given to the priest. And what does remuneration rest on? On faith. Because if it is only through faith that you give that person something, and that person accomplishes that work for you. And saying, on what does faith rest? On your heart. It is so. And then the next, what deity are you identified with the West? With Varuna, the god of the waters. And on what does the god of the waters rest on, is established on? On the seed. The seed is your very essence, everything that has given rise to you as an individual. You start with a seed form, isn't it? That's what. And on what does the seed rest on? On the heart. That's why they say the child looks like the mother and the father. Like it's like as if it has come out from that person's heart. And then he says, so what does the seed rest on? On the heart. Yeah. So what deity are you identified in the north? So he said with the deity Soma, that is the god of the moon and the creepers, everything that's nourishing. And on what does Soma rest? On initiation, Diksha. And what does the initiation rest on? On truth. That's why they say when you initiate it, speak the truth. And on what does the truth rest on? On the heart. Then he says, yes, it is so, Yajnavalkya. So it is on the heart that truth rests. So what directions are you identified up in the fixed, the above? So he said, the god of fire, Agni, speech. So yeah, so Agni, the fire, is established on Vak, speech. And on what is the speech established on? Is saying on the heart. Yeah, because that's why they say when you speak, like there are some fiery speakers, the fiery speech. Yeah, you can burn things just with your speech. So speech also rests on the heart. So then the questioner makes a kind of a mistake, kind of in the sense of, he says, on what does the heart rest on? And Yajnavalkya gets furious, saying, he uses an expletive, that expletive in the sense, not the way he calls him the ghost. That is, literally that which vanishes in the daytime. Ahilleki, he says. And if you think that the heart rests on something else other than the body and the mind, then you are dead. So when you are alive, everything is there. So the heart rests on itself. The heart doesn't have any resting place. So then again he starts questioning. And what does the body and the mind and the heart rest on? So he is saying on the life breath. And on what does the life breath depend on? He is saying on the inner life breath, that's called apana. And then what is the inner life breath dependent on? He is saying on vyana, that which pervades everything. And what does that vyana, that's the inner life breath, is established on? That is saying udana, that which is light and which lifts you up. And on what does the udana? On the samana. These are various degrees of inner and inner existences within us. So it's getting down deeper and deeper and deeper. That's the idea. So he asked, what is the heart rest on? It's getting deeper. And then says that he ends with the famous, concludes with the famous words. This Atman, which has been described as not this, neti, neti, that's a very famous, this. It is imperceptible, for it is never perceived, undecaying, for it never decays, unattached, for it is never attached, it's unfettered, it never feels pain and never suffers any injury. This is your center, this is your self. But well, if you say on we have understood that we are going deeper and deeper and deeper, and we are finding, okay, this is the very place. But here it is never perceived, it is unfettered, and where exactly, where do you find that? You go deeper, but there has to be a location for that. So another Upanishad takes this up, and he says, saying, Om, and this is the beautiful. There is in the small lotus-like dwelling in the city of Brahman. The city of Brahman is your own body is like a reality consisting of the gross, the subtle and the causal sheaths or coverings. So, deep within you there is a kind of a lotus-like, you can say, form. And within that lotus-like form is that space. Now, what is that space? We are talking about two things. One is a form, and the other, the inner core, is formless. So, here you say, that which exists in that space has to be known. It has to be inquired into, and it has to be realized. Now, there is something called the supreme space. Daharam vipapam parameshva bhutam. So, it's a space in which floats the entire existence, everything. So, that is the supreme space that is there within each one of us. So, these are kind of some mystical teachings, but it was meant for people like us who wants to inquire where exactly we need. So, this is the center of your existence. Now, if you think that this is kind of little, yeah, but where? Where is the center? So, Swamiji gives a nice kind of example, it kind of explains it. Every person, say, is like a circumference that is nowhere, but the center is here in the body. I think this is clear. But I thought I was only limited to the edge of my skin or my acquirements and my possessions. No. So, you are here and your circumference is vast. He said, with the circumference is nowhere, with the center in the body. Okay. Now, when you say the person, it means that entity. Existence also means entity, truth, reality, and so on. So, your reality is the Atman, is here, it is discovered here, which is vast, infinite. And then he brings in, what is God? God is that whose circumference is nowhere and whose center is everywhere. It's like those physicists talking about centers everywhere. Exactly. So, your circumference is nowhere, but the center is here in the body. You, in the sense, you as the Atman, not the real, the entity, the reality which is there in you, the truth that is within you. And God is, what is God? Circumference is nowhere and center is everywhere. Now Now try to wrap your head around this. He kind of is putting this thing so beautifully. There is nothing more elegant than this, that the infinite and the finite are kind of in one, you can say, mode, looked at it from different standpoints. Now there are various ramifications for this, but I won't go into this. I will end with one small incident in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. That will give you an idea. When Sri Ramakrishna was in Kashipur, that is when he was suffering from the terminal throat cancer. Doctors had given up hope and everybody were nursing him, everything, they were doing everything to keep Sri Ramakrishna comfortable. And Sri Ramakrishna, because he couldn't eat and because of constant pain, he couldn't sleep, he was kind of, he had become rail thin. So one day he was sitting on his bed, I mean a small bed, and all his disciples, the prominent disciples who later became his apostles, were all sitting around. And they were sitting around and he made just one gesture. So he says, he puts his finger to his heart and then he circles it all around. And then he looks at the eyes of each and every disciple. They couldn't understand, because he couldn't speak. No? He had to use these gestures. So he looked at Swami Brahmananda, his, you can say, spiritual son. No one could answer. Then Swami Vivekananda says, what you have said is, this whole creation has come out from you. And Sri Ramakrishna beamed. He's pointing out to Raja Maharaj and all this. He got it. He could say it. So where's the center of existence? It's here. That is the greatest secret. If you can understand Sri Ramakrishna, that is your center of existence and the center of existence, infinite existence. We look at us and we say, oh my God, I cannot be the center of existence. No, you can't. How can a stupid person like me be a center of consciousness? But our ego kind of says, I am the center. I need attention, I need concern, I need everything. We're not talking about the ego. We're talking about a very deeper aspect of one's personality. That is there within. So the center of existence is this, deeper and deeper and deeper. And because we can't get into that on our own steam, it's just impossible. It takes lifetimes to just get into some deeper aspects. We are floating on the surface. So we need help. And how does help come? This is the way. Goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, you'll find. And that's why we are asked to meditate on Sri Ramakrishna. Now you know. When you meditate on Sri Ramakrishna, you are actually meditating on your real self, the center of your existence. Now, I am using the word Ramakrishna. You know, Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell was one of the amazing, one of the great scholars of mythology, and he wrote many books. You know, the hero's journey and all that. I think you must have. During one of his interviews, I mean, in the 50s, I think it was in the 40s or 50s, the interviewer kind of is telling, So, what is, then he says, what is this eternal principle you are talking about? And he says, it is called Brahman. And they say, is this the same thing as God? Oh, again you are personalizing it. It is impersonal, Brahman. Then he says, this impersonal, the eternal principle, is existent now. You experience it. If you do not experience it here, then you can never experience it anywhere else. He says, whatever eternity, eternal principle is here and now, if you do not experience it now, you will never experience it later. Our lives must experience this eternal existence, but how? Time and space is our existence. Time, space and causation is right now in our, you can say, mold of existence. This real center of existence transcends time and space and causation. It is here. We are experiencing it, but in a kind of a very nebulous way. If you can understand it directly, here it is, then it is all over for you. You have reached your center of existence and the center of the universe, everything that exists. Om, peace, 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 in the name of the Lord Hari. And we can take some questions here if there are. No questions. Yeah.
Swamiji, Pranam, you had mentioned that to meditate on Ramakrishna to focus on what is the real nature of existence within. So how do we do that? I mean, is it something which has to be done the same? Like, what is the process for that?
Saying, he picked up the question that we are asked to meditate, and we have not been having a clearly defined idea or concept about our own existence. So, we need to meditate on Sri Ramakrishna. That's and so how do you meditate? You got the object is to meditate on Sri Ramakrishna, but how do you meditate? Oh, these are various yogas that have been designed specifically to address this question. So, take up any of the yogas of, like, say, Raj Yoga, Patanjali's yoga, or you have something like the Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion, or the yoga of knowledge, or the yoga of karma, one of these three, or you combine all of these. So, the specifics of the, you can say, practice is, you could go to something like every Friday we have these unpacking yoga teachings and practices. So, it is a kind of a graded course that could help anyone. That is the idea behind having these things. Okay. So, they are saying, okay, great talk, find it difficult to think about Sat without Chit. Good. That is, it is difficult to think about Sat, that is existence, without Chit, consciousness. That's the mistake with a lot of people, that existence is consciousness. It is said Sat and Chit and Ananda, and they use a hyphen, or now it is a kind of a one word. What is the reality? Satchidananda. Satchidananda, what is Satchidananda? Existence is consciousness, is bliss. It is not a quality, it is the inherent nature. So, existence is consciousness. And so, what's that? Is it so dry, consciousness? No, it is bliss. So, this is, it's very, don't separate the words. You are writing, you are separating, but in your mind you got to link this consciousness with existence, because only consciousness can exist, and it is just bliss. in the Upanishads, a particle of that, this bliss, sustains the whole world of living beings. Can you imagine? And you know what we are running after? So, we are running after dust then. A particle of this bliss of Brahman sustains this entire living world. So, this is, thank you for everybody. Everybody is saying, oh, Grashi, yes, okay. So, if everybody is fine, we can close with Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.